Alors oui, j'ai eu l'opportunité et le plaisir de parler avec le Premier ministre de Québec récemment, en fait sur la première journée du commencement du mois de l'histoire des Noirs. Et j'avais souligné l'importance de lutter contre le racisme systémique et d'assurer que les droits des minorités soient protégés au Québec. So in terms of in terms of, excuse me, in terms of course, the ongoing pandemic, we will just repeat the message also every time with respect to the phase we are in now, which is our call for an intergovernmental task force to provide a unified, coherent, and coordinated national response to the pandemic on any of the themes that would benefit from such a coordinated response, be that our response to long-term care, our response to education, our response to messaging, our response to restrictions. All of these things could benefit from a coordinated response. And so we will continue to call for the creation of that intergovernmental task force. Nous répétons notre appel pour la création d'un groupe de travail intergouvernemental pour répondre d'une manière coordonnée et unifiée et compréhensive sur tous les thèmes qui bénéficieraient d'une réponse et une stratégie, un plan coordonné. Soit l'éducation, soit les restrictions, soit les messages, soit notre protocole pour la distribution des vaccins, toutes les choses qui seraient meilleures avec une réponse et une stratégie coordonnée. On veut le voir et on va continuer notre appel pour cette task force, cette groupe de travail intergouvernemental. With respect to the CERB, and thank you so much, Tammy, for joining us today. Just to say very quickly that we take very seriously the promise that Parliament made to do whatever it takes as long as it takes to protect Canadians. This is something that the Prime Minister has repeated many times, and we are committed to that, and we are going to hold all of Parliament to that and our government to that. And so my question then is, why has it come to this? Why has it come to having people who are already struggling and continue to struggle under this second wave, having to launch a class action suit just to get the relief that they deserve for a mistake that the government made and has already admitted to? I simply can't understand why Canadians are going to have to go through such extreme measures to see the government reverse a mistake that they have made. And so as a reminder of where we are, we know that the government of Canada acknowledged as late as December that they indeed had made a mistake, that incorrect information had been given to many people in Canada who contacted them about their eligibility for the CERB. This information was posted on their websites, distributed by call agents, and of course, people are entitled to rely on the information they receive from their government. The government is now saying that despite that mistake, and despite acknowledging that they made the mistake, they will continue to insist that those self-employed people who did not make at least $5,000 net in the 12 months preceding their application must repay whatever amount they received under the CERB. And so this has caused a great deal of anxiety. This is extremely unfair. And we say this is not a question of debt forgiveness. This is not a question of compassion. This is simply a question of the government owning up to its mistake and then making it right. It's just a question of fairness. In terms of the Green Party of Canada, we were the first to ring the alarm bell on this all the way back at the beginning of December. As soon as the notification was put out, we did it on behalf of our constituents and every person in Canada who has been impacted by this unfair decision. We have written to the minister multiple times. We have launched, we have supported parliamentary petitions. We have launched online campaigns. We have held press conferences and town halls. Not a week goes by where we do not speak about this theme, and we will continue to speak about it until the government does the right thing. And I thank people like Tammy for keeping the pressure up on the government to do the right thing. Alors en français, le gouvernement continue de refuser de faire ce qui est correct et essaie de dire que les gens qui ont reçu le PCU et les gens qui ont contacté le gouvernement pour confirmer qu'il était éligible pour le programme, que le gouvernement avouent leur erreur et n'insistent pas sur les repaiements. C'est très, très, très dommage qu'on voit que les gens sont maintenant dans une situation où ils croient qu'ils doivent prendre action. Il faut lancer un procès contre le gouvernement pour assurer qu'il ne doit pas repayer le PCU. Le gouvernement a promis de faire tout ce qui est nécessaire pour protéger les gens au Canada et cela ne correspond pas à cette promesse. Alors, le Parti vert, nous avons été les premiers de sonner l'alarme sur cette situation. Nous avons introduit une pétition, nous avons lancé des campagnes en ligne. Nos députés ont écrit au ministre culturel pour insister que le gouvernement fait ce qui est correct. Et nous avons aussi fait beaucoup d'assemblées publiques, beaucoup de conférences de presse et nous allons continuer de le faire jusqu'à le gouvernement fait ce qui est nécessaire, ce qui est correct et n'insiste pas que les gens vulnérables, les gens qui ont postulé de bonne foi, qu'ils repayent le PCU. Et avec ça, je passe à Tammy pour dire quelques mots. Tammy, as we said, is someone who is living this incredibly anxious experience right now. And it's always best to hear from the people most directly impacted. I'm hoping that her message will go straight from this press conference into the ears of the minister and the prime minister and the government. And perhaps this will be the moment that they decide to do what is fair and what is right and cancel the repayments for those self-employed people like Tammy who applied in good faith and who followed the rules. Tammy?
Hi, thank you so much, Annamie, for having me here today. I am living this right now. I'd like to speak on behalf of more than myself, though. I would like to speak on behalf of the group that I am in, several groups, the thousands of people that this is affecting, who are in the middle of a second lockdown, children at home. I have 2 children here. We all have a story. And I have a few key points that I'd like to touch on just super quickly. One is the government's purpose in doing this. They're not telling the full truth. Many of us were told well after receiving the letter that this is in fact gross income and we have nothing to worry about. All of us called in to see, do we qualify? We called before we did the due diligence. I'm asking why they are humiliating seniors, embarrassing self-employed individuals that are trying to get their businesses back up and running, whatever their story may be. My specific situation, without going into great detail, my husband was hit by a drunk driver a couple of years ago. It affected how I altered my business in 2019. Had it been 2017, 2018, I wouldn't have even looked at CERB because I was doing very, very well in my business. That being said, I want to know why they're continuing to expose us like this and humiliate us. There are a lot of seniors, stay-at-home moms that aren't coming forward because it is embarrassing. It's showing that we're running incompetent businesses, which isn't the case. The government chose the amount of $5,000, and I receive hate mail on a daily basis. Why do I feel I deserved CERB if I made less, 5,000 net? The government could have chosen to make it 20,000. They didn't. They came up with that number. We followed the qualifications. The emotional toll that this is now taking on us has affected our families. Many individuals in the group have not slept. They have severe anxiety, depression. They are not functioning at this point. The third point I'd like to touch on is how come they can't give simple answers? Why is it taking so long? Questions like, can we just amend our taxes? Self-employed individuals don't need to have all of their expenses in. We can bump up over if that's what they want. And when you call CRA right now, a pocket full of people are being told to amend, and a pocket full of people are being told it's legal, but we may consider it fraud because you're doing it to get served. So now the government has another issue of all these people that did go ahead and amend, and now are claiming CRB as well because they technically qualify. This has been, I have no words. I have no words for being lied to by my government. Why did they even give it to us to put us through all of this at the end of the day with now no money coming in because we qualify for nothing with this change that they made? And as I said, when you call CRA, I called after the letter on November 26th. I called 6 times. All agents told me that it was gross income.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Thank you. And thank you so much for representing all of the people, so many of the people that are really suffering in this moment because of, as you said, the uncertainty, because, as you said, they feel very much let down and misled by their government. Thank you for speaking out on their behalf. And just to underline that, the points that you made again, we know that this pandemic has had a very, has been feminized. We know that this pandemic has had a female face to it and that women have been disproportionately impacted. This is yet another way, because of course, many of the self-employed people, many of the people that have the small businesses, whether it's daycare or physiotherapy or tutoring, many of those kind of small businesses are women. Many of those people, of course, are seniors who are doing this work part-time. And these are people who already, again, have been very disproportionately hit by the pandemic. They're the ones that have been put most at risk, and this is making that bad situation worse. And so, as Tammy said, this is something that is just about doing what is right and about giving people clear information. To be in the second wave of this pandemic and to not have clarity about this after all of these months, to have Minister Qualtrough still saying that relief is off the table, that they are not planning to make this right, is very disappointing. And we will continue to keep up the pressure. I'm sure Tammy will as well, and all of those who have been reaching out with their stories. We'll continue to do this on their behalf. C'est absolument insupportable que le gouvernement continue de ne pas faire ce qui est correct. On sait que la pandémie, le visage de la pandémie est un visage féminin. On sait que les femmes sont le plus fort touchées et affectées par la pandémie. Et beaucoup des récipients du PCU sont des femmes avec des petites entreprises, des femmes qui travaillent pour eux-mêmes, des pensionnaires, des personnes qui ont été déjà vulnérables et maintenant sont mis en plus de risque à cause de l'erreur du gouvernement et un gouvernement qui refuse de faire face à leur erreur. Alors, merci Tammy, et nous allons continuer à lutter et mettre la pression jusqu'à le gouvernement, ministre Qualtrough et le premier ministre fassent ce qui est correct et décident de ne pas insister et annoncent qu'ils n'allont pas insister sur le repaiement du PCU de ces individus. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Madam Paul. Thank you, Tammy. We will now begin with questions. One question, one follow-up, please. Nous allons commencer avec des questions. Une question, un suivi, s'il vous plaît. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand feature. Si vous voulez demander une question, veuillez utiliser la fonction de lever la main, s'il vous plaît. And please identify yourself and your media outlet. S'il vous plaît, veuillez vous identifier ainsi que votre organisation. So we will begin. Any questions, please? Mr. Meyer, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Paul. Thanks for taking our questions. If you permit me, I have a question on another subject, actually. It's the Enbridge Line 5 pipeline through Michigan. As you know, the governor has ordered the pipeline to be shut down. The Conservative Party up here is choosing to make a big deal out of this to their followers. They're warning them there could be fuel shortages, job losses. What do you make of the Conservative focus on Line 5 right now today?
I think that we're at a crossroads in Canada in many, many respects, and we need to be planning now for the future that we want to have. I wouldn't advise, the Conservative government and their leader are free to take any road that they want to, but we as a party are choosing the road of the future. We are completely focused on preparing for a green recovery, one that leaves no one behind, one that is sustainable, and one that sets up our economy with the jobs of the future. And in that, we join the United States and the newly elected president, the new president of the United States, President Biden, in his commitment to moving towards a green recovery. We joined the 27 countries of the European Union and many of our international peers who have decided that the future is green, the future is in clean tech and renewables, and that the investments that we should be making are investments in those sectors rather than in sectors that are in an irreversible decline. And that is something we do on behalf of people in Canada, and particularly those workers out in the oil patch and in provinces that are particularly impacted by the decline in that sector. And I do it also, everyone brings their own life story to politics. I do it also on behalf of people like my brother who work out in the oil patch, and he was a roughneck until recently in the oil patch. So it's for them that we know we need to plan for the future now. And I would really like to see all of the parties join us in that because we all have an interest in making sure that we begin to plan for that green recovery.
Thanks. And just a quick follow-up. Just to be clear, do you agree with Michigan's governor that the risk of an oil spill in the Great Lakes is too great for Line 5 to continue to operate, even though it does, supply refineries in Canada?
Well, the governor is thinking of the interests of the people of her state and those that would be impacted. I have no reason to doubt the results of the research that informed her decision. We know that the line is very old. We know that it has begun to deteriorate in places. We know that it's bent in places. We know that it would be catastrophic if there was a major oil spill with that line. And so I'm sure that she has taken all of that into account. I know that it has implications for us, but these are false choices. This is not a choice between jobs or the environment. It is not a choice between protecting our natural environments and protecting our clean water supplies and protecting our continued necessary access to fuels or again to jobs. There are those who benefit from creating those false binary choices. But we know that we protect ourselves the best, that we create more jobs if we protect our environment as well. And we know that we can't survive without a healthy environment. So as I said, I hope that every single party will join with us in planning that green recovery, join with us and join with our international peers in planning one, and that we stop making that false choice for people in Canada between jobs on the one hand and our green recovery on the other.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. James Murray, would you like to ask a question? One question, one follow-up, please, and please identify your organization. Thank you.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
James Murray, Net News Ledger from Thunder Bay, Ontario. Two issues. First of all, with the CERB, why is it taking the government so long? This is what looks like a common sense decision. And, if it's the big companies are giving millions, the little guys need help, and they're the ones who need help or else they close.
I'm going to do this because I don't know the answer to that. And as Tammy said, she doesn't know either. And it's just so important whenever possible. We always try to have the people who have been directly impacted by the lack of action on, because this is a very human story. And as you said, there are those that are receiving, there are corporations and sectors that are receiving hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of bailout money, while at the same time we see that people in Canada, again, those who already were thrown into a lot of difficulty because their businesses had to shut down, or because they lost sources of revenue during this pandemic, we see them continuing to struggle. I cannot for the life of me understand why the government has chosen the priorities that it has. I can't understand for the life of me why it has come to this, having average Canadians of modest means having to launch a class action lawsuit. I was speaking with Tammy yesterday, and I remember her just saying, what do I do next? And I'll let Tammy maybe speak to that. But what we can do is what we are doing. We are going to be that broken record, because I think the government is hoping that we are going to turn the page and move on to something else. But until there is action, until people like Tammy get the relief they deserve, they get the action they deserve, we're going to keep talking about this. Tammy, you said you're stuck, right?
Yeah, the one thing that I really want people to hear on that question of why is it taking so long, the message that we hear from Qualtrough quite often, or the government, is we're CRA. It's directed to talk to CRA, or CRA can call CRA, or CRA can help you. And what I want people to hear is that when we call CRA, and we're calling CRA, they are telling us that this is not their program, that this is Qualtrough's program, that she is responsible for the program, and Justice Trudeau and the government, and it is their job, and they are waiting on their guidance to make any decisions. CRA has made it very clear to countless hundreds of us that they don't know because the government is not giving them direction. So CRA does not have any answers for us.
No, this lays squarely with the government.
Yeah.
And not that long ago, Minister Qualtrough said that any adjustment, any change, any recognition of the mistake by ending the demand for the repayment was off the table. And those were her words, that it is off the table. Well, we're here to say that it has to be back on the table. And it seems as if the only thing that is going to get movement is not going to be the political pressure from parties, but really the public pressure. And so I will call on every single person in Canada, whether this directly impacted you or not, to please think about the hundreds of thousands of Canadians that are affected. And remember, they're your neighbors, and some of them are probably in your family. And ask the government, again, just to do what's right. No one is asking for a handout. No one's asking for a special favor. Just do what's right. Recognize your mistake, and don't insist on that repayment. Send the letter tomorrow. The minister could do that tomorrow. Send a letter to people like Tammy saying, we are not going to ask for this repayment. We made a mistake. We own up to it. We're not going to ask for it. Tammy, just before you go ahead, I don't know if there's other questions. Let's just see.
Absolutely.
Yes, James, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. And I'm going to shift direction on you a little bit. We were talking to your parliamentary leader, Elizabeth May, on last week on the issue of transportation and the national transportation strategy. Our history started. Canada is a country because of the railway. Now we have, under the federal government, they have control over rail. They have control over national trucking, marine, and aviation. One of the areas being left out, and it now has all the provinces doing their own little slice-up approaches, is intercommunity bus. So now we're at a point where these small bus companies across the country are in the position of being forced out of business by the COVID pandemic because traffic numbers, the government is saying, don't travel. And they seem to be leaving the bus industry in the back. Now, bus companies are saying, hey, maybe it's time for the federal government to step in, take this all back, and have a national strategy on intercommunity buses. Your comments?
Thank you, James, for the question. And the Green Party, you know, we take that commitment seriously, as I said, to do what it takes to protect people during this pandemic and beyond. And there is no question that transportation is a part of that. It was a part of that before the pandemic. It will be a part of that after the pandemic. And as you said, we've been ringing the alarm bell about the very, very troubling and dangerous depletion of our transportation systems, particularly in rural areas, particularly our interregional or interprovincial bus system. You know, you said it very well. This is something that is leaving, has already left, and will continue to leave communities not just under service, but without any service at all. It will leave people stranded. It will continue to. It will be a continued cause of the increase of disparity between the quality of life in urban areas and in rural areas. And so this is something absolutely where we expect the government, the federal government, to invest. This is something we expect them to take an active interest in. And certainly if we are looking at areas and sectors to bail out in a responsible way, these are the sectors that need investments now so that those networks don't disappear and have to be recreated. And as a reminder, we know that particularly bus service in rural areas is something that was set out as one of the calls by the Commission on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and girls as one of the things that could make the biggest difference in protecting Indigenous women and girls in those communities. So this is a question of access, it's a question of justice, it's a question of making sure that people in Canada, wherever they live, have access to the basic services they need. And of course, that has to be of primary interest and concern and action by our federal government.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions, s'il vous plaît? No? Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Madam Paul. Thank you, Tammy Seed. This concludes our press conference. Ceci conclut la conférence de presse. Merci. Bonjour.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.